We're going to kick it over to you, Andy Serwer, over at the Milken Institute Global Conference. Andy.
Of course, is who runs the supply chain. I would say I don't have a crystal ball, so I am not going to even pretend that I can give you a date. I do think we are making progress every day. Last week's announcement that we're moving to 24/7 operations at the two biggest ports will absolutely start to show some improvement. Fundamentally, the problem here is, we've never lived through anything like this. You've been covering business a long time. There's no time I can remember that but on purpose, shut the entire economy down, told everyone who worked in a manufacturing operation to go home for months, shut all the lines down, and then tried to turn it back on again on a dime. So I think for the coming months, we are going to see some struggles here. But already lumber prices have come down. You're starting to see building materials prices come down. As more people get vaccinated and go back into the workforce, labor supply will increase. And I think it'll be incremental improvement every step of the way.
When you talk to business leaders, CEOs, what are those conversations like on this topic? What do they expect from government? What do they need from government?
Yes, great question. Because as you correctly identified, this is primarily on the private sector to work through their ordering and their supply chains and their management. They're expecting us to make investments in infrastructure, which we are trying to do and get Congress to pass the infrastructure package. They expect us to make investments in better roads, better bridges, safer roads, technologically enabled ports. That will make a huge difference. They're expecting us to make investments so every American and every small business has broadband. All these things will make it easier and faster to do business. And I think they're expecting us to be a partner, to be available to them as a partner to support whenever and wherever we can, which is exactly what we're trying to do. So in the supply chain work, I have convened numerous times CEOs in my office to increase transparency, encourage suppliers and consumers to share information with one another. A lot of the lack of information has eroded trust. Suppliers wonder who's hoarding, who's stockpiling. Consumers wonder, our business is really pushing to the maximum limit of supply. So we'll enable that transparency, the convenience, push wherever we can, as we just did, to get the ports open 24/7, and just be a partner to business as they work through this.
The major delays in electronics and chips is something that you and I have discussed before. What does this look like in the coming months, even beyond the shortage of new cars? Should Americans expect a holiday season without video game consoles and laptops under their trees?
As a mother of teenagers, I would say I would love that vision of a video game-free event, but no, I don't think that's going to happen. Look, there may be delays, obviously. The semiconductor situation is going to take a long time to fix. This is one I feel confident saying it's not going to be fixed in a month or 2 or 6 or 12 months. I think we'll see great improvement over the next 6 to 12 months as we increase transparency in the supply chain and as we just catch up. For example, just COVID has closed several factories in Malaysia recently that feed into the semiconductor supply chain. So we still are seeing that kind of disruption, and we will move through that. The long term, though, this requires a long-term fix, which is we need to make more semiconductors in America. You and I have discussed this. It's a national security, significant national security problem that we don't make any leading-edge, cutting-edge microchips in America.
Right.
And 70% of them are made in Taiwan. So the only solution for that is to make federal government incentives for companies to create manufacturing facilities in America, and that'll take years.
And you've proposed that Congress pass that $52 billion CHIPS Act, which would address that shortage of manufacturing domestically. Secretary Raimondo, I think you were saying that the cutting edge supply is pretty low, but even overall, we only produce 12% of the world's chips as opposed to 40% not that long ago. What are the chances of that bill passing before the midterms?
High, I believe high. It passed through the Senate with a big vote, a bipartisan vote. It's now in the House, and we are pressing to make sure it's passed before the end of this year, not before the midterm, before the end of this year. And that money, that's $50 billion, which would come here to the Commerce Department, and we would invest that in public-private partnerships to incentivize the creation of more semiconductor fabrication facilities in America. It's really a stunning thing, Andy, if you think about it. The semiconductor industry was invented in America. The whole industry was started here. And not that long ago, as you said, we made enough chips in America to fulfill our needs. We produce 40% of the world's chips. And now it's 12%, and none of the cutting-edge chips, which are necessary for computing, high-end computing, artificial intelligence. So this is a pretty urgent need, and I hope Congress gets it done by the end of this year so we can get to work.
Shifting gears, I want to ask you about the reconciliation package. It sounded like yesterday the president was talking about a price tag of around $2 trillion for a compromise, well below, obviously, $3.5 trillion. So that means cuts, and lawmakers are hard at work, I hope, looking at that. I know you're in conversations with them about that. What programs are most important to you and to the business community? What should stay no matter what?
Again, that is, I learned as the governor that you don't necessarily tell the legislature how to do their business, so I'm not going to do that here. I will say the president believes they all need to be there. He's also willing to compromise, and as you said, $2 trillion seems to be a number we're circling in on. I'll tell you what I hear from business and what I think is essential to improve America's competitiveness. I hear a lot about workforce, and you and I have talked about this in the past. Mm-hmm. There's a need among businesses, small and large, to have employees trained in a different set of skills: digital skills, data skills, technical skills, cyber skills. And if we don't get to the business of doing that training, we will fall further behind other countries. So, the president's package calls for huge investments in apprenticeships and sector-based job training. I think that's important. The president's calling for big investments in childcare. Women cannot go to work without childcare, and we cannot thrive as an economy unless women are fully participating in the workforce. So that means pre-K, universal pre-K. You shouldn't have to be rich to pay a lot of money to send your kid to pre-K. So it's pre-K, child tax credit, investments in child care. We need a whole infrastructure of affordable, accessible, high-quality child care in order for women and men to be, fully productive in the labor force. You talk about inflation. You want inflation to go down, get more people to work, supply. We need supply of labor and goods, invest in the care economy. And then climate. Climate is the existential threat, obviously, that we all face. We need to get to the business of getting serious about making these investments. Otherwise, none of this will matter.
I want to ask you about the linkage between the reconciliation package and taxes, because slimming down has implications on taxes, you would think, including corporate taxes. Will those be scaled back? And I think you've said, Secretary, that business leaders are okay with more taxes in private, but in public, groups like the Chamber of Commerce and the Business Roundtable have remained publicly opposed to those tax increases. How do you see this playing out?
Yes. Well, I think like the whole package, there will be compromise. The president suggested the corporate tax go up to 28%. Surely there will be compromise coming down from that number. Precisely where it lands is being negotiated, as you say, literally as we speak. I have heard from a number of business leaders that they could handle some increase in the corporate tax rate. There's concern, not that 28 is too high. I've heard many say 25, 26% is absolutely in the realm of what they could live with. Secondly, I've heard from almost unanimously, this is interesting, almost unanimously from successful business people have said they would not oppose increases in income taxes on high earners. They understand that we need the revenue to make investments in infrastructure and in childcare. And they acknowledge that increases in their own personal taxes would not, would help improve our competitiveness. So we'll see. It's a negotiation. Taxes, somehow in this country, we've gotten religion around tax policy, and it's a really area fraught with challenges. One of those third rails almost, huh? Yeah, it's almost religious fervor. We don't want taxes. I'm a commerce person. I used to run a business. You don't want taxes uncompetitively high. No question. You want businesses to be able to put some of their profits into research and development. We also had about 60 large profitable businesses in America last year that paid nothing in taxes. You have people making hundreds of millions of dollars a year, paying a lot less, rate in taxes than a middle-class person. So at some point, we have to come to our senses. But more than any of this, putting aside the ideological arguments, we need the money to make the investments. Like every business leader I talk to says, invest to make sure Americans have broadband. Okay, we agree, that takes money. Improve our roads and dilapidated bridges. We agree, that takes money. Improve our airports, ports, railways, public transportation. Agreed, that takes money. So, we're just trying to do the right thing to make these investments. One other specific point on the package that may or may not be threatened is free community college monies. And I'm wondering where you stand on that one in particular, just a small drill down on that. Yep. So I don't know exactly where that stands in the sausage making. Mm-hmm. I don't know. We'll see where it shakes out. I can tell you this. I know it works. And I know it works because I saw it work. About 4 years ago, when I was the governor of Rhode Island, I worked with our legislature to put through a plan to provide every Rhode Island student 2 years tuition-free community college. And all the arguments, there was a lot of opposition at the time, same that the president faces now. We got it done. Fast forward a few years, we've seen a 5-fold increase in the on-time graduation rate of students of color. We've seen a tripling of the graduation rate of students. We've seen a much closer relationship between the community college and businesses, whereby the students are graduating debt-free and a job. Mm-hmm. The investment is actually quite small in terms of dollars, but the benefit to companies and businesses and the labor force and students is enormous. And also, everyone seems to be talking about equity. People are in favor of equity. Tuition-free community college is a humongous investment for equity.
Right.
Because students who drop out are disproportionately students of color. It's not because they're smart, they want to graduate, but they're juggling 3 jobs and trying to get through college. So I don't know if it will happen, but I do know if it happens, it will work and be good for the American economy and the American people.
Shifting gears, I read in a profile about you in AP just the other day about your Bulova watch. Are you wearing that? And can you tell that story?
I do not have a watch on today.
Okay.
But I
you
only own Bulovas. I own 3 Bulovas.
And that's a story that you wear the watch frequently because of your father?
Yeah, my dad worked at the Bulova Watch Company his whole career, 28 years. He had so much pride working there, so much pride. And then the jobs left. They all went to China, and it was brutal for him, my family, and all of his friends. I have such clear memories as a little girl watching my dad trot off to work in the morning with his lunch bag that my mom made him, and he'd get in the car in his carpool, and all the guys worked in the factory. My dad was a metallurgist, somebody was the custodian, somebody was the security guard. You know, it's like, as a kid, there was so much security in that. There was a job, to my mind, as a kid, like there was a job at that place for everybody until it went away. In fact, actually, once upon a time in the 80s and early 90s, Rhode Island was filled with jewelry manufacturers. Tiffany, Speidel, Bulova, and then all the small businesses, electroplating shops, tooling shops that fed into that. And so Rhode Island, like so many places around America, was really, their economy was gutted when manufacturing fled our shores to China. So that's it's a big part of the reason I took this job, to play a small role in the revitalization of American manufacturing. And I wear the watch as a tribute to my dad, but really to all hardworking men and women who honestly are not looking for a handout. They're just looking for a decent job and a shot to, do a good job.
Maybe then it's a good time for me to ask you about the U.S.-China relationship then. And you've been sharply critical of China's unfair trade practices, and your administration has opted to keep the tariffs in place, for now at least. But you've also expressed a desire to strengthen business ties with China. How do you reconcile both those perspectives, Secretary?
Mm-hmm. Just exactly as you said. I mean, we want a robust commercial relationship with China. We want our companies to be able to do business in and with China and Chinese companies. However, we must protect our national security, non-negotiable. And so we have to be careful not to do anything that would in any way ever harm our national security. But also, the Chinese have to play by the rules. American companies are the best in the world. American entrepreneurs are the best in the world. We need a level playing field. We need China to respect our intellectual property, hold up their end of the bargain. This so-called Phase 1 agreement where the Chinese committed to a certain number of purchases. They're not even close to holding up their end of the bargain. I don't think any serious person thinks they do respect our IP. They're putting up kind of barriers for our exports all the time, making it harder for our companies to compete. So I think that we want to do business, but there needs to be a level playing field, and they need to play by the rules.
I have a follow-up question to that, but before I ask it, I want to tell our studio audience here that they can submit questions to me here to ask the Secretary by scanning the QR code. So go ahead and submit questions. My follow-up question, Secretary Raimondo, is this. Your department just today announced a new rule to slow down the export of hacking tools to places like China and Russia. This was a rule in the works for a while because of concerns about how it inadvertently hampered cybersecurity collaboration. What were the conversations like with businesses in finding that balance? And how effective do you expect it to be in the years ahead confronting Russia and China?
I expect it to be effective, but like anything else, it's one tool in our toolbox. So we have a number. The way I think about our competition with China, and to a lesser extent Russia, is that we have an offensive game and a defensive game. The offensive game, I think, is much more important, like investing in America so we can compete. So we have a skilled workforce, cutting-edge technology, best-in-the-world infrastructure, economic equality, or certainly less inequality than we have now. That's all offense, and that's the president's Build Back Better agenda. Then on defense, we have rules like you just referenced, export controls to deny China and Russia of certain of our key technology, investment screening. That stuff's important, and I do think it will make a difference and protect American companies. But on balance, I think it's the offense that is where we need to be focused.
Here's a question from the audience for you. What do you see as the best way to increase the number of diverse entrepreneurs in America?
Great question. And whoever you are, I would love to hear from you if you have ideas. So I think it starts in school. So when I was the governor, we brought about an initiative so every kid in every public school, in every grade, could take computer science. You need to introduce everyone, girls, kids of color, kids in inner cities, kids who live on tribal lands in rural areas, to technology, computer science, entrepreneurialism as early as possible. I think added on to that is opportunities for young people to do internships and start companies and be exposed to entrepreneurs as early as possible in school. And then on top of that, I think we, and this is something I'm very passionate about, is business needs to come together with schools, job training, community college, colleges, just so people understand from the very earliest ages and at every level, the reason you get these skills is to get a job and maybe start a company. So I think that's important. Separately, there is an initiative that's now in front of Congress that the president supports to set up regional tech hubs all around the country, and the Department of Commerce would implement that. And that, I think, is extremely important. It's, money in communities outside of Silicon Valley, Boston, LA, et cetera, in middle America, to stimulate entrepreneurship, to get great ideas out of colleges and universities and turn them into companies. I think that is, very important to get outside of the main cities.
All right, we are going to have to wrap things up with that. Some great ideas from you, Secretary Raimondo. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to talking to you again. Please join me in thanking U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.